This is the Sovol SV08. It's Sovol's continuation of the Voron 2.4, but unlike the Voron 2.4, it's designed to be mass manufactured at scale and shipped almost entirely assembled. It also costs less than half as much money as most Voron 2.4 kits. But is it as easy to modify, customize, and upgrade as a Voron 2.4? Can I really install all of these cutting-edge upgrades, most of which literally aren't even on the market yet? And will the printer actually work at the end of this video, or have I bitten off way more than I can chew? Stick around to the end and let's find out. So a little bit of quick background about the Sovol SV08 just before we dive in for those of you who haven't been keeping up. Now, I recently reviewed this machine and I, like nearly all of the early reviewers, really liked it. While it's probably not the best machine for first-timers, overall it is a fantastic machine that blends stellar performance, massive build volume, and high quality, all at an unbelievably low price. With all that said, it is far from perfect, and in my review, I pointed out a number of things that disappointed me or even really annoyed me. Fortunately, Sovol has since made this machine fully open source, and I don't just mean the software either. I mean that they've literally uploaded all of the complete step files and PDF and software for the entire design, which means that if we don't like something about it, we can, change it. Don't get me wrong, this machine does work really well out of the box, but it could be better. And yes, I know, some of you are already typing down in the comments section that for $549 or $600, you don't want to tinker or upgrade your machine, you expect something that works out of the box. And that's fine, go buy a Bamboo Lab machine. But for those of us who do love tinkering, upgrading, and customizing, as well as just personalizing, the question still remains. How easily will this machine bend to our will? So here's how this challenge is going to go. Throughout the video, I'm going to go through the list of things that I didn't like about this machine, starting from the easy or beginner upgrades all the way to the much more advanced upgrades, and we're gonna see if, how, and whether or not it's actually worth it to perform each upgrade. Oh, and by the way, now is probably a good time to thank the folks over at Sovol for sponsoring this video. I actually told them that I was planning to upgrade and change some things about the machine anyways, and they not only encouraged me, but they also sent me the step files before the official publication so I could get to work on it. In fact, they are actually so enthusiastic about all of you upgrading and personalizing these machines that they offered to sponsor the video so that I could take a break from my other projects just to focus on upgrading it. So make sure to check out the link in the description where you can pick up the SV08 or any of Sovol's other awesome printers such as the SV07, SV07 Plus, the SV06 with clipper screen, or even just pick up some of their high-quality, affordable filament. All right, are you guys ready? Here we go. The first and probably easiest thing in fixing and upgrading this printer was going to have to be fan noise. As I pointed out in my review and many others noted, the stock control board fan is loud. It's something like 61 dB according to another reviewer, and it is always on. So side note here, I recently spoke to Sovol and I encouraged them to try and return or exchange all the fans that they bought for SV08 production. So it is possible that in later production models this won't be an issue, but unfortunately on my model, it really is. In fact, it was so annoying that I literally couldn't get through finishing the review video before fixing it. To do so, I did two things. First, I replaced that cheapy fan that they put under there with another one that I just happened to have on hand. It actually wasn't even one of those quiet fans, it was really just an old Creality one, but it was already a dramatic improvement. Now, I can only imagine how much better it would be if you use something like a Noctua fan. Additionally, because the fan points downward, and in my case, there's never going to be anything under there where I have it mounted, I just used a Dremel tool to cut away the fan shroud. This, probably more than anything, made a world of difference, and honestly, I recommend that you do the same unless you anticipate getting stuff or wires under your printer. Up next, let's talk touchscreens. Sovol is now offering their own plug-in touchscreen, but quite honestly, at $99, it is a little bit pricey. Sure, There is already a community mod that replaces the LCD up front with a Big Tree Tech 5-inch LCD, just like the one that I put on my Voron 2.4. And I might do that to this machine as well in the future, but I still think we can do even better. Now, sit up and pay attention because I'm about to leak a new product that literally no one knows anything about yet. As you might know, Big Tree Tech recently launched their Panda Touch wireless touchscreen for Bamboo Lab printers. And lucky for us, they've actually been hard at work adapting it and developing a version that works on Clipper printers as well, which they were kind enough to send me a pre-production alpha version of it just for this video. Now, compared to a standard wired touchscreen, this little device offers a number of benefits. First of all, the glaringly obvious one is that it is fully wireless, and it allows me to move around with it in the studio. This is really great because considering just the sheer size and how much noise the SV08 makes, it isn't exactly going to be sitting next to you on a desk. So it's really nice to be able to take the entire screen with you to another part of the house or office. But even when it is mounted and charging near the printer, you can place the screen somewhere much more comfortable, at eye level, for example, instead of just on the bottom of the printer. The other big benefit of a setup like this is that it allows me to control multiple printers from one screen. Win. I managed to get the screen connected to my Wi-Fi and then to the printer, and it does seem to work. I can home the printer, preheat, I can even load files on here in G-code and send those files to the printer. Now, I do have to give a caveat here that this is a very, very early pre-release firmware, so it is buggy and ugly and really only for early testers like myself. With that said, I think you'll agree that this screen has massive potential. If BTT can add a prettier interface like they have for the Panda Touch Bamboo version, this thing is going to have a major advantage over just another wired screen. Now, the product isn't even on sale yet, but BTT usually does launch events for stuff like this, and last time they sold the first 500 units at a really heavily discounted price. So if you do want to register to be one of the first people to be notified when it launches, check the link in the description, which also will help support the channel and might just convince BTT to keep sending me early access products that I can leak to all of you. Next, let's talk about build plates. The build plate that Sovol sent over with the SV08 really isn't terrible, but it suffers from two problems. One, I personally find that the black textured sheets don't have quite as good adhesion as the gold PEI ones, and two, it's single-sided, meaning that you really only have a textured build plate. I love textured build plates, but sometimes you do need tight tolerances and you want to have the option. Oh, and also, before Sovol had improved the Z-drift issue, I actually destroyed my textured build plate during testing. Oops. Fortunately, Wham Bam was kind enough to send me over their 355x355 XTR flexible build plate, which is a drop-in replacement for the existing one. It's actually the exact same one that they already sell for the 350mm Voron 2.4 and Trident. A quick Z offset adjustment, and we were well on our way to printing parts with a beautiful glassy bottom surface. Easy peasy. Once again, link in the description to pick one of these up and support the channel in so doing. Up next, it was time to deal with another slightly annoying little issue. This machine is actually a little bit too tall to fit nicely into my industrial shelves, which means that I really can't easily pull it out when I want to work on it or upgrade it. Now, I initially had tried to just remove the feet and put it on the frame, only to realize that the Z pulleys on the bottom actually protrude, so the printer actually tried to run away from me. Fortunately, there are already upgraded and low-profile vibration dampening designs available on printables, such as this one on the screen or this one. One designer even claimed to see significant improvements on their input shaping graph after installing them, so that's pretty cool. Now, I compared the original ones to two different options, and I then decided to do my own hybrid by cutting down one of the upgraded designs from the bottom to 16mm and then printing it in 100% infill TPU. I then gave them to my colleague Sergey to install, and he reported back that those ones don't actually clear the pulleys. This video is way overdue though, so rather than just printing out some new ones, he just cut off one side of each foot flat and we will reprint another style later. Let's move on. With that fixed, the next biggest issue that I faced during my review was Z-drift, which was caused by the fact that the printer wasn't making proper use of the bed height sensor switch in the back to determine the Z offset. Now, before actually making any hardware changes to fix that, I did just want to check in for all of you and see where Sovol is on actually fixing this issue out of the box. So I did install the latest version of the firmware and updated profiles, which was made easy by the fact that the pre-production units like mine were sent out with an eMMC adapter. It's almost like they knew that these machines were not fully polished when they sent them out to early reviewers. In any case, after flashing that, I ran the automated Z offset calibration in the menu, and that worked pretty well. As others have noted, it does tend to give a little bit too much smush on the build plate, but that was a really quick and easy adjustment right on the dial wheel. Since then, I have been able to get some fantastic prints, and the Z-drift does seem to be better. With that said, I do agree with both Aurora Tech Channel and Nero the Canuck creator that the Z-probe should probably be checked before every print. And when I spoke to them, Sovol let me know that they are going to be updating the official macros, but honestly, I'm not gonna bother because as you'll see in a few minutes, I'm hoping to swap out the entire bed probe altogether. By the way, on that note, I do want to point out that there are already a number of mods out there that completely replace the problematic probe on the SV08 altogether, including designs for a clicky probe, a micro probe, or a more accurate M12 inductive probe. Isn't open source amazing? Basically, if you prefer not to have to worry about getting your Z offset exactly right, or you don't want to wait for the improved print start macros that take advantage of that micro switch in the back of the printer, you can just bypass all these issues altogether and install any one of a handful of more accurate bed probing solutions. But all of those are going to pale in comparison to the one that I've been cooking up. All right, now with the low-hanging fruit out of the way, it was time to get into the meat and potatoes. Sorry, too many food metaphors in one sentence. As you might remember from my review, by far my biggest disappointment on the SV08 was the proprietary nozzle and the fact that I wouldn't be able to use any of my existing high-quality nozzles or really any third-party nozzles whatsoever on this machine. That's why before the printer even launched, I was hard at work designing my own upgraded heatsink, which would take advantage of the E3D Revo system. Now, I actually considered making a V6 compatible version too, but that would have required getting another kind of ceramic heater rather than the readily available E3D Revo one or the even more popular bamboo style ones all over AliExpress that it already uses. And at that point, I mean, you're just swapping one proprietary part out for another. So why not at least choose a standard that so many people are already using and which is really, really well documented? But hey, if any of you want to try your hand at designing your own V6 or V6 Volcano compatible hot end for the SV08, I will link to its GitHub in the description below. For now, let's get this thing running on a Revo. Now to get this done, I took the step file of the hot end from the open source repository and began modifying it to match the open source cold side specifications published by E3D. Shout out to the folks on Twitter for actually helping me find those specs, by the way, because I couldn't at first. Now, in order to maintain the same overall length as the original, I did have to extend things quite a bit. I then posted my various iterations on Twitter, and after a few rounds of feedback, I was getting pretty close. I also do need to give a shout out to Discord user Pickle, because after spending way too many hours on this, I really needed to get back to my other work, so he took over. He fixed the design flaws, took care of the technical drawings, and really brought the whole design over the line so that we could actually order this thing. From there, I uploaded my designs to PCBWay, selected my preferred material and finish, and got my quote, which was only $43 for a single unit. But I will note that if people are interested, I might just bulk order these to get the costs down by 50%. Then again, I am also going to be open sourcing the design so that Sovol or Big Tree Tech or E3D or even you at home can make and sell your own if you want. I've actually even heard word from E3D and they are considering offering a Revo high-flow version with pre-crimped connectors that match those on the SV08's Toolhead board, which would make this effectively a drop-in replacement that you could swap anytime you want and still use the old hot end. Oh, and on the topic of E3D, I do want to thank them for providing me with a Revo high-flow setup, and I want to thank their local distributor, my friend Ben over at Rav Meimad, for express shipping it to me same day. And I do also want to thank PCBWay for providing me the prototype free of charge. Now, if any of you are impatient and willing to either crimp or solder your own connections, I am going to actually upload my design to PCBWay's project marketplace so that you can order it right on your own directly. But first, I think we should see how it actually works. So the prototype arrived and it looked and felt absolutely perfect. Unfortunately, Pickle and I had missed one little fact that the top of the heatsink needs like a larger bore, but that was actually really easy to fix by just drilling it, and I'm gonna fix it on the model. From there, it was literally just a direct bolt-on replacement exactly the way that we had designed it, at least mechanically. Unfortunately, when I went to actually wire it up and test it, I discovered that I had somehow shorted the original Sovol Toolhead board. That was quite honestly really annoying. I don't know how I did it, but it wasn't the end of the world because actually I did want to try upgrading the probe to something a little bit more advanced, and that was actually going to be a whole lot easier if I just upgraded the Toolhead board to something that supported this new sensor. Now, wait, before you click away because this is unrelatable to you, I know. It sounds really overwhelming, and honestly, I was pretty scared to do this too. Now, I actually enlisted the help of Emmanuel, the owner of yet another local 3D printing retailer, Filamentech. But in the end, I was actually shocked at how easy it was to get this thing going. Now, this part is going to get a little bit technical, so if you, like me, don't enjoy the electronics parts of upgrading printers, you can just go ahead and skip ahead to the next chapter. Basically, the big question here was whether or not we could directly use the EBB36 Toolhead board that Big Tree Tech had provided to me for this project. Link in the description if you guys want to show them some love. We really weren't sure whether or not we were going to need a U2C board to convert the USB signal that the Sovol board outputs into a CAN bus signal that this board uses. And I even had Ben over at Rav Meimad ship me one of those via courier, just in case. In the end, it actually turned out that we could actually repurpose the same wires that Sovol used and in the same connections by just soldering a USB-C connector onto the green and white data transmission wires on the toolhead side, and then crimping DuPont connectors onto the red and black wires and plugging those into the CAN input of the board. Now, this unfortunately does mean that there are two fat plugs sticking out of the top of the toolhead, and try as I might with 3 or 4 different adapters and mount designs, I really couldn't get them to fit inside the original toolhead without bumping into the blower fan up front. So for now, I just hacked apart the toolhead cover just to get things up and running, and I am probably going to need to design something new, as well as new cable strain management. I might also try to figure out a way to make these connectors stick out less, for example, using a 90-degree USB-C connector, or maybe even relocating the toolhead board to the back or something like that. From a software point of view, this was actually even easier than the hardware. I just had to plug it in, change the location of the toolhead board, comment out all the original toolhead related settings and configs, and then just put in the new ones. Honestly, it probably took about 15 minutes, which was a shock to me because I was dreading this part. From there, I just needed to wire each one of the fans, sensors, pins, and all of that up to the board. And I was really pleased to see that Big Tree Tech does include every possible Molex and DuPont connector alongside each of the little crimpable pins that you will need to change the connectors on every possible wire. The only challenge here was that this printer actually has 2 toolhead fans, and the board, for some reason, doesn't have a spare slot for any more fans. So I just spliced in the extra fan to the same connector, and it seems to work fine, though it definitely does mean that I can't fully remove the toolhead cover anymore. Now, back to testing out the electronics, and of course, our new hot end, now that it's wired up. I was shocked, seriously shocked to see that all the fans worked. The thermistor was reading the right temperature, and it was even heating up properly. Side note, good job to Sovol for actually sending out 60 to 70 watts to the toolhead board, meaning that you can upgrade the heater to the 60-watt heater core without causing any strain on the wires. In my testing, filament extruded nicely, and despite the way that it looks right now, and a little bit more difficulty jiggling filament into the extra long path on the new heatsink, everything does seem to work just fine. Real talk, I literally can't believe that I did it, you guys. But we're not quite done yet, and you know that it wouldn't be a TNL video if something didn't go horribly and comedically wrong. So with this new board installed, it was time to take advantage of one feature and capability that would have been much more difficult, if not impossible, to mount onto the original board, even if I hadn't fried it. And that's a more advanced form of bed meshing. You see, probing the bed is great and all, but if you haven't been following along, we've actually moved past that with Eddy Coil bed sensors. These type of sensors, like the innovative beacon probe released last year, don't just probe the bed, taking a handful of bed measurement points in a mesh. They actually scan the entire thing, taking just seconds to do so at a much higher speed. The end result is, at least I'm told, better, faster, and more reliable. Well, Big Tree Tech has actually been working on their very own versions of these sensors, including one that wires directly to the Raspberry Pi via USB, and this one on there, which connects directly to the CAN bus Toolhead board that we just installed. Now, they were kind enough to send me a couple different versions of this so that I could see how they paired with the massive bed size of the SV08. Now, I could have quite easily run a separate USB cable all along the cable sleeve and just gone with the plug-and-play version, but that seemed really silly given that this is already running on just 4 wires. For this reason, I was going to try to connect it to either the BL Touch or the inductive probe slot on the original board, and I think I probably would have been able to do that, but yeah, I somehow fried the board while handling it, so instead then, I decided to connect it via I2C. I don't actually know what I2C is, but I know that the Big Tree Tech Toolhead board has it, making this probe a plug-and-play upgrade. As for mounting it, I decided to keep things really simple. I removed the original inductive probe, and I took off one of the screws that hold the Toolhead board to its mount, and then I put a longer one through with a washer and a nut on the back to mount the Eddy coil. Then, to prevent it from wiggling around, I lathered on some rubber cement. I know I probably could have taken the PCB out and then designed a custom housing that mounts to the holes left behind by the inductive probe, and that would have probably looked a lot better, but at the time of recording this, I haven't put out a video in like 3 weeks, and I have employees and rent to pay, so we're moving forward. Then came the challenge of actually configuring the eddy current sensor. I didn't think it would be an issue given that Klipper has recently integrated eddy coil support into the main branch, but after configuring the macros, I actually found that the latest version of Klipper provided by Sovol does not yet support it. This is a bit disappointing to me because I don't love when manufacturers have to dirty the mainline Klipper, making you dependent on their own version and on them to integrate the latest updates. Fortunately, Sovol is still regularly updating the firmware, and since it's fully open source, the community will be able to keep it up to date even if they abandon it. With that said, this seemingly simple mod, ironically, after all the more difficult ones that we've done, this is going to be the one that breaks the camel's back, and it's going to be the one that keeps me from getting the printer working in time for this video. Like Icarus, I have flown too close to the sun. Despite getting the entire thing mechanically and electronically connected properly, I found out after the fact that Sovol's most recent version of the firmware hasn't integrated it, and at the same time, if I install BTT's version, it's gonna brick the printer or disable some functionality. This is annoying, and I really wish that I could get the machine to just run mainline. Sovol has told me that they are going to add eddy current support, but, and I totally respect this, they told me that they want to prioritize all the things that they need for end users, like fixing Z-drift, improving the macros, and that the engineers are focused on doing that instead of something that only I have requested, which is adding eddy current support. That was the right call. I respect that Sovol made that call, and maybe it'll come out soon, quickly, I hope. So in the meantime, I did reinstall the inductive probe. I jankily borrowed some 24-volt power from the CAN bus connector, but it's still causing me problems. It's not reading correctly. I'm quite sure that I could go through all the configs, disable bed meshing, remove the probe altogether, and just use the switch in the back to home Z. But look, guys, I'm going to be brutally honest with you. Like I mentioned before, at the time of recording this, I haven't put out a video in over 3 weeks, and I am insanely stressed about the negative impact to the channel, not to mention the financial impact of not publishing for so long. So I am afraid that this video is going to be a bit of a cliffhanger because I just can't afford to wait another week to get the Eddy coil sensor and fire up the printer. But hopefully between when I film this and when we finish editing it in a week or so, I will make some more progress. And if I do, then hopefully you'll be seeing footage of the printer running smoothly with all of these upgrades on your screen right about now. One way or another, I will make sure to update you guys with some YouTube shorts and community posts when I finally get this thing working. So, not the most satisfying end of the video, I know, but I do still want to touch on my conclusion regarding the SV08's upgradability, as well as some next steps for my own personal machine. As far as whether or not this machine is upgradable, I have to say that it definitely is. Not only does the availability of the step files make it an absolute breeze to design things like custom mounts, heat sinks, and so on, as we're seeing on printables, but the electronics are extremely well documented on GitHub. However, because it's running its own customized version of Clipper, it does lose points for not being quite as easy to upgrade, at least not when it comes down to super new things that have only just been integrated into Clipper. With that said, Sovol is going to be keeping it up to date and integrating the latest changes. And as I mentioned before, the fact that it's open source means that if you're impatient or you're better with editing software, you can change, upgrade, patch, and update it yourself. Again, if you're more savvy with software development than I am. As for my personal machine, there are a few things that I need to fix and then upgrade up next. So before we wrap, I want to quickly outline them. The first and most obvious one is going to be getting the eddy current sensor working so that I can get rid of the inductive probe altogether and once again, actually print. Then I'd like to do a better job soldering on a lower profile USB-C connector, after which I'll hopefully design a custom heightened tool head cover that will hide all of the wiring. While I'm at it, I also need to extend or otherwise modify the strain relief because I know that it is super unsafe to have these cables jiggling this way. By the way, I may do that on camera or off camera depending on how well this video does, so make sure to hit that like button and comment down below if you've made it this far so that other people will see this video. After those crucial fixes are done, I'm thinking about enclosing this printer, even though I do already have an enclosed Voron 2.4. So I'm actually debating creating my own enclosure using the mounting holes already on the printer and some acrylic that I have lying around versus using Sovol's ready-made enclosure. And I have to say that Sovol's enclosure does seem a little bit expensive for what it is, but I assume a big part of that price is just shipping massive panels around the world that are, you know, big. One of the benefits of creating my own enclosure would be that I could customize it. For example, making the panels magnetic like the ones I did on my Voron 2.4, or adding my own exhaust filter setup. Though there is already a community mod out there to adapt the Voron exhaust filter to the top hat design that is also available for the SV08. Then again, I know I'm going back and forth. If you consider what an enclosure kit from Prusa costs for even a much smaller machine, I guess that $150 isn't that bad for a price to enclose this one. Anyways, there you have it. My adventures in upgrading this new open source printer. Once again, I need to thank Sovol, Big Tree Tech, E3D, Ravme Mod, and Filament Tech for helping provide parts and guidance, and an extra special thanks to Sovol for sponsoring this video so I could afford to spend the time on it. Again, link in the description to pick up your own SV08. I also want to take a quick moment to thank our YouTube members and Patreon supporters, particularly our Nylon and Peak members, Chip Cox, Two Crazy Ketos, Amir Khen, Chris Miller, and Aaron Pape. Let me know if I'm pronouncing that last one right, by the way. That's all for this week, but I'll see all of you on the next layer.